Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to more League of Legends news. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. We're going to break down all of the North American trades and roster swaps so far. If you guys were here for our last video, thank you all who left comments because this is very subjective. Just to preface today's episode, I'm going to share my opinions on some of these trades and roster swaps. You guys can share your opinions because it's all very subjective. Of course, during this roster mania, this offseason slash heading towards preseason, we don't really know the future and what this could hold for many teams out there. And a lot of these teams are not fully made so far. So it's going to be cool to see what you guys think, maybe what I think, what comes true, what does not come true. And I also want a video for you guys to go to that actually touches on all the trades and roster swaps of your favorite region. So today we're going to focus on North American changes. Tomorrow is going to be EU. Hopefully Wednesday and Thursday we'll touch on all the Korean changes, so on and so forth. So hope you guys all enjoy. Let's break it down though, because apparently plenty of North American teams have just way too much money to spend. And the first of which, I think probably the best roster we can actually say is fully confirmed for their 5-man will be Liquid. And of course, Steve taking to Twitter really clarifying he has spent a buttload of money on these guys so far. Of course, last week we talked about that being Cloud9 Jensen replacing Pole Belter, and this week it will be another buyout from Gen G. They've actually lost a couple players now. We'll talk about their diminishing roster here probably later this week or next week, guys, and that will be acquiring CoreJJ in place of, that's going to be Ole. I think going to be probably the biggest improvement on this roster, and you now have a full roster, guys, of, you could arguably say in their lanes in North America, top 3, even possibly top 2 players. This should be the strongest roster on paper. Of course, when it comes down to synergy, I'll probably say that word quite a bit today. It's going to probably take a lot, especially acquiring anyone from over the seas over there, that being CoreJJ. Although it shouldn't be a struggle with synergy, like a lot of other teams are going to see a lot bigger changes. We'll talk about them later down the video as well. This is a huge signing, and with Impact now being a North American resident, this of course allowed this change to happen. So I think Liquid so far, and again in the very back half of the episode I'll talk about my rankings so far of these teams. Liquid has to be my #1 spot, guys, and the only team I think that can actually compete with them would be 100 Thieves. They have went beyond. I would say if Steve spent a lot of money, then the 100 Thieves is right up next to him, probably spending just about as much, if not a little less than that, guys. They of course re-sign someday. They will lose Cody Sun, unfortunately enough. I think all of us are probably a little bit melancholy about that, right? I'm happy to see him leave and actually go somewhere else and be able to play possibly at Worlds, not to jab anybody, but besides the point, right? You re-sign someday. I think a lot of people out there are definitely surprised they even were able to re-sign him. That likely could be because of who they actually had join this roster. We'll talk about very shortly here. Of course, you already had Afro signed alongside Anda. A lot of pressure on Anda now with this roster looking very stacked. And I mean, on paper, this is a roster I think is certainly comparable to Liquid. The only problem, of course, that Liquid does not have that these guys might is the communication barrier with their 2 new entries. First of all, being Huhi, I think arguably the biggest upgrade for this roster, if not an NA so far, compared to who we'll be replacing, that being Ryu, who definitely, I would say, it certainly did struggle there in the latter weeks of his career there. He will stay though on 100 Thieves as their coach, and that will be because of a language barrier not only for Huhi, but their biggest addition so far will be Bang replacing Cody Sun. Now Ryu notably does speak very good English. He'll likely hopefully help these players out learning their English, and that will be likely the main, of course, the main language for these guys. I don't expect Afro and Anda to learn Korean anytime soon, but I could be wrong. So it should be an all English speaking team. How quickly though Huhi and Bang can actually, of course, overcome that communication barrier is going to be, I think, the key to their success or their failure on this roster. I really do think, though, on paper, a huge skill improvement. I'm not going to forget, though, the thing that Cody Sun has done for this lineup, and to say Bang is an immediate improvement in terms of ceiling would probably be a yes, but will it be immediate in terms of results? I don't think so. I think you got to remember what Cody Sun really did to this roster, and communication was likely a huge part of that, playing his role. We'll see exactly how big of an improvement Bang can be when it comes to this team, but still certainly a very powerful upgrade, I think, across the board for this team. And then I think the most questionable changes we've had so far is that being Echo Fox acquiring over half of Clutch Gaming's roster, guys. Solo, Apollo, Hakuho. I almost want to say an underrated roster, but I really just can't clear or justify that statement. I do want to say though, of all the big changes out there, I think it would likely, Echo Fox certainly surprised me. I didn't think they'd be the team to make the biggest changes out there. You would think your bottom half teams would be some of the ones who would make that, arguably even CLG, who did just the exact opposite of that so far, we can say. It will be over half Clutch Gaming roster joining these guys, and also on top of that, though, you have to keep in mind they keep their 2 strongest players, Huhi, Dardoch. They stay in place of this lineup. I think overall, this could be a big shift for these guys. Do they need a big shift? Well, you could say based on the back half of their last split, yes, they could, and this just could be that. Now, how well these guys will click, That's the big question. But again, I think questionable changes here. But if you're an Echo Fox fan, I think changes that might have been needed out of this roster. We'll see exactly how they actually do. But again, they got to remember, guys, they keep their 2 best players. There's not much to argue about if you're actually a diehard Echo Fox fan. We will see how these guys do click, and you get the synergy of those 3 Clutch Gaming players alongside your 2 best former Echo Fox players now re-signing with that roster. Now, also, speaking of questionable trades out there, Cloud9 do add Nisqy, if you guys do not know, from Splyce Gaming. So, going to be a questionable. I really do think of all the changes out there, this one was likely the most surprising so far. I don't think Nisqy necessarily proved himself anywhere besides maybe some big playoff runs. He showed his momentum, he showed his carry ability, and I do think in terms of North American LCS, if you're going to compare North American with EU, probably an upgrade, right? Probably going to be able to compete in that North American LCS, but besides that, internationally, with a lack of experience, we're going to see how Nisqy does perform. If Cloud9's roster can re-achieve the greatness they certainly did, I would say 2 of the most questionable trades so far would be Echo Fox acquiring over half Clutch Gaming, and Cloud9 Nisqy, a nice surprise for sure. Definitely a kind of a surprise face to see, but we'll see exactly how it works out. And I wouldn't say questionable, maybe odd, maybe if you're a TSM fan, maybe disappointed as well. I would say a weird change as well. TSM making some big changes. It's going to be the Sven and Mythy combo now going down the drain. Sven did tweet out last week about some complications on the team right now. He tweeted out some updates about this. Certainly this probably had to be part of it, guys. Mythy now replaced by Smoothie. I wouldn't say necessarily a downgrade, wouldn't say a neutral position. I'm not sure how this will turn out. I'm sure, well, I guess many of us are very anxious to see how this team does click, as they have probably signed the biggest surprise besides the Nisqy and besides the Clutch Gaming changes. I would say that the biggest shock here will be TSM reaching down to the Turkish scene, and that will be Royal Youth member known as Broken Blade. Now, arguably one of the most competitive, one of the better players in the TCL, but will he compete with these guys? Will he click with these guys? And as an import spot, he has to live up to a bunch of expectations. You could have thought a string of players out there who could have taken his spot, and they take the risk on him. So he must have shown something to this team is exactly what their future may hold. I'm excited to see what this team does, but these are certainly changes I have to take into effect when I'm going to rank these teams in terms of their best changes. And speaking of which, guys, the team I thought would make the biggest changes has actually made the least changes. It's going to be CLG, guys, re-signing Biofrost, and replacing Huhi will be OpTic Gaming, their by far and away best player, Power of Evil, which I am super excited to see, guys. I think, in my opinion, definitely a huge upgrade for CLG. Along with that, they also get Coach Weldon from TSM for 3 years. I believe he did announce a long-term move here for CLG. I think going to be a team maybe not starting off on fire, but definitely a team who will grow together. If they do click well, guys, I think CLG here, a very important signing for them being POE. And again, I think Weldon has a lot more effect or impact than most people actually consider it to be. So I'm very excited to see where this team does go. In terms of rankings, though, I would love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Who has made the best swap so far? I would like to put Liquid up there. I think Liquid and 100 Thieves. If the synergy is there for 100 Thieves, I think I would almost put them above Liquid in terms of roster swaps so far. I gotta say, in terms of the back half of this, though, some very questionable changes, which could, of course, you know, with heavy risk comes, or with big risk comes big rewards. But for teams like TSM, I almost got to put them at the back half of the barrel. So I'll do it, guys. I'll take the risk. I'll say 100 Thieves made the best swap so far, followed closely by Liquid. I'm surprisingly gonna put some risky trades. Of course, the newer faces, that being Cloud9 and TSM. I'll say those are very heavy risk, but I'll put them at 3 and 4. And very lastly, though, I would say these are definitely going to be effective trades. I think in terms of North American impact, guys, in terms of overall play, we'll see some better teams. Obviously, could be very wrong about that. I think Echo Fox and CLG made some good swaps. I could easily put them ahead of TSM and Cloud9, but you got to think about this. Clutch Gaming in their last split had an awful split. You're acquiring over half of a roster that went, I believe, 6 and 11 or 6 and 12 in their last split. Take that into concern. Although you're keeping your 2 best players and you have that synergy of those 3 new members, just take into effect of the roster you're actually trying to acquire. And then very lastly for CLG, a team who again had that amazing loss streak. You almost thought I was going to say wins, amazing loss streak in the last half of their split, and they're retaining most of that roster. I think still some great acquiring of POE as well as a brand new coach and re-signing Biofrost, but you're maintaining a roster that struggled against these teams who are only going to improve throughout the coming splits. So that's why I'm going to put them probably in the back half for now. What do you guys think? As always, my name is Jake. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow to talk about EU changes, which I'm arguably more excited about than North American changes because, well, Jensen still stabbed me in the back. But I hope you guys all enjoy. I will see you all back here tomorrow. As always, I'll see you then.